Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on the road ahead for Alberta doctors. But first, the call for a compromise. 1 full year into the pandemic, and provincial governments are struggling to keep economies afloat under the weight of ballooning deficits. And as Alberta targets a referendum on equalization in October, an organization also calling for reform suggests a rebate of transferred tax dollars would bring a timely boost to provincial budgets. The suggestion comes from the grassroots, nonprofit, nonpartisan association, Fairness Alberta, and Bill Bewick is executive director. Bill, when last we spoke, you had addressed the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance, part of pre-budget consultations, with Ottawa pumping billions of dollars in support across the country these past several months. What's your understanding of how the pandemic has changed the equalization playing field?
Well, there's clearly a lot of dollars coming out of Ottawa to all the provinces. But what's come into focus in the last year or so is that the provinces, with some work by Ben Eisen at the Fraser Institute, he has shown that the provinces have really come together in what he calls a great convergence over the last 5 years. It's not just the pandemic, but the energy downturn before that. And so right now, the provinces have, in a sense, never been more equal. And yet equalization payments continue to grow with GDP. So there's less need for them than ever, and yet they're bigger than ever. So this clearly is becoming an unjustifiable windfall for the 5 provinces that are going to be receiving the payments this year. And given, A, how much our deficit is federally is enormous and needs to be tackled, but maybe more importantly, B, how much the so-called have provinces like Alberta and Ontario and BC and Saskatchewan, how much they're struggling to cover their own provincial responsibilities. It seems really unfair that taxpayers in those provinces are having so many tax dollars taken to the federal government and then sent to other provinces purely to help with their provincial services. So we think it's really obvious that there's time for reform is overdue on equalization, and we should start by scaling the payments back and providing some more support to the provinces that have been contributing so much over the last 20 years.
Okay, so are you looking to scale the payments back, or are you looking to rebate what's already been sent to Ottawa?
Yeah, it's basically completely unfair to be sending $20.5 billion to the have-not provinces this year because they are so much closer to the so-called have provinces than in the past. When you factor in things like the cost of paying nurses in Toronto and Vancouver and Edmonton and Calgary compared to St. John's or other places in the have-not provinces, basically we're equal, and we all have the same struggles right now with paying our provincial services. So ideally it could disappear tomorrow, but perhaps a more likely compromise is let's just cut the payments in half for now until we figure out a new formula and send rebates to the provinces, all the provinces. But that would mean about $1.5 million in Alberta and BC, and closer to $4 billion for Ontarians at a time when their own provincial governments are really struggling.
Now, Bill, your focus is Alberta, but I hear you also drawing BC and Ontario into the conversation. Why?
Well, our group, Fairness Alberta, has always felt that what is missing most of all is not so much Albertans being aware of what's going on with federal transfers and fiscal fairness, but helping the rest of Canada understand why it is that Albertans are so upset, why so many Albertans are looking to even leave the country. And so we're trying to help people across Canada understand what these underlying issues are with a little bit of detail, but keeping it accessible. And because we know that at the end of it, if there's going to be reforms that help improve this country, they're not just going to come from Alberta. We're going to need a majority, at least, of Canadians. And when you look at who's paying into equalization without getting anything back, it's BC, Ontario, Saskatchewan. And you put those 3 together with Alberta, and you've got nearly 70% of the population of the country. So we believe this is a pretty good strategy to get Ontario and BC demanding reforms, and then it seems pretty likely that would happen.
Okay, the Alberta government is promising a referendum in October on launching a constitutional challenge of equalization. What are you looking for to come of that? Why is a referendum here in Alberta necessary?
To some extent, I think it's already having the biggest desired effect, which is getting the attention of the country. We ran an editorial in the National Post last week. There's been two really good stories in the Globe and Mail on this topic that have exposed how Quebec's hydro revenues are undercounted, and that drastically inflates the payments that they get. Another one on the same topic that we've been discussing, which is how the provinces are more equal than ever, and the expanding payments are completely unjustifiable. So I believe that the biggest result that can come out of it is getting the attention of the country, and in particular getting the attention of the federal government. But it really will be much more effective. The negotiations that follow are going to work a lot better if we can get people in places like Ontario and BC also interested in seeing some action on this.
Okay, well, and in terms of that interest, there is the prospect of an early federal election in the coming months. What would it take for equalization to become a campaign issue that is more than just of interest to Albertans?
I believe it's going to take people in BC and Ontario realizing how much their own interests are tied up in this. And I know for most people right now, their biggest concerns have to do with health and an economic recovery in their provinces. And so connecting the equalization program, which seems sort of almost esoteric and something that could only concern some of the provinces that receive the money, getting them to realize that no, that's actually your tax dollars, and they should perhaps be going to your provincial services since you're paying them instead of so much of it going to other provinces.
Bill, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you kindly, sir.
Yeah, thanks. And if people want to learn more in advance of the referendum, please go to fairnessalberta.ca, and we're happy to help.
Bill Bewick is Executive Director of Fairness Alberta.